gamers? I'm Jason.
I'm Julie.
And today on Dice & Dragons, we are going to be reviewing G.I Joe Mission Critical, published by Renegade Game Studios, based on the Guardian system designed for Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid by Jonathan Ying. This specific game was designed by T.C Petty III. Now I'm going to toss it over to Julie, who will tell you more about the game itself.
So first of all, we'd like to thank Renegade Games for this review copy. We appreciate the support of the channel, but we'd like to remind our viewers that our opinion will remain our own. So this is a cooperative game that is for 2 to 5 players, ages 14 and above, and plays in about 60 to 90 minutes.
Now, the game may be expandable up to 6 players if you use the rules from the Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid rulebook, which is what we're doing, because we will be reviewing the Heavy Firepower expansion at the same time, and we're trying to get the most amount of heroes played. Now, I did look for those 6-player rules, but they weren't in the rulebook, but you got the components for them. So just wanted to be clear as to why you see 6 heroes out there, because I know someone's going to ask down below in the comments. Now, just like Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, you will be moving around the board fighting the forces of evil. In this case, you'll be fighting off the forces of Cobra, facing off against some of their famous lieutenants, and of course, the evil Cobra Commander as you try to stop his plan for world domination. Now, some of the differences between Heroes of the Grid are the fact that we do have the new universal deployment system, which will just identify different locations to correspond with your cards. Now, it's not as pretty as what you see in Heroes of the Grid, but it's far more functional, letting you use all the different foot soldier types at any different location. So you can move around, kick some butt, and then you can always go back to the pit to power up. That mechanic is the same as what you could do at the command center for Heroes of the Grid. You're going to need to fight 2 different lieutenants, then you will come face to face with the commander. You will also have the vehicle board, which we haven't set up yet. You've got all those vehicles right there. You can see a nice stack, which will be revealed once you get the game started, and then you'll be able to play those vehicles to get some temporary boost during your battles. So you might want to use them against the foot soldiers, save them for the lieutenants. It's entirely up to you. You pay for the vehicles by spending the foot soldiers that you have defeated. Now, there is no limit to the amount of foot soldiers in the game, so we have a nice die that we have just to keep track, because we like demolishing as many foot soldiers as possible. We like getting the Megazord. We like vehicles. We're doing the same thing here. On that note, Julie, I think I've talked enough about the game.
Yep, I think it's time to grab our drink.
Grab our fellow Joe. And take it to the table one more time. Now I'm going to take a quick look at the components for G.I Joe Mission Critical. We'll start with some of the stuff that I have off camera. So this is the quick start guide, which is what I'm going to be using to learn the game. It highlights some new differences. So this is for veterans of Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid. If you're a fan of the channel, you know that we've played a lot of Heroes of the Grid. So this one pager details all of the new rules and what you're going to need to know to play the game. So it does highlight what some of the new tokens are with the new universal deployment system, which are tied into these tokens, which looks like they correspond to specific locations like a military base and things like that. Also, you've got just which Cobra type of trooper you're going to be spawning, so identify that. And because of that, they've got these universal decks not necessarily depicting the images of the foot soldiers, which is new, then the rules for the vehicles. Also off camera here, we've got the G.I Joe Mission Critical rulebook. Taking a quick peek at the rulebook. So far, it looks very similar to the rulebook for Heroes of the Grid. The instructions, the layout, and I like the layout. I had no issues learning Heroes of the Grid, so no issues with this one. I might just need to take a look at like Baroness and Nemesis cards, because there are some details that I need to brush up on. Haven't played against a ton of Nemesises in Heroes of the Grid. Then on the back, you've got your handy dandy reference sheet. So we're going to go through the tokens right now, just so we can clean this off and take a look at the board. So we've got the Cobra deployment tokens, which you're going to be using to identify the different decks, which color they correspond. Don't worry, we'll take a look at the cards and it'll make sense. We've got the panic token, we've got the first player token, we have the identifying locations, whether we've got a military base, fortress, science lab, maybe it's a recon center, I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll see the names in just a moment. We've got the energy resource tokens and the damage tokens. Here we've got the vehicle tokens, where this says, +1, and the regular vehicle token. I do not know how to use the vehicles as of yet. I will be sleeving the cards to make sure that if we ever do decide to try to mix and match with Heroes of the Grid, everything's going to work fairly well. So I'm filming this before I have a chance to dive into the rules. So we'll just remove these tokens because they're going to get in the way. Next, we've got the G.I. Joe Global Base, and it's double-sided, just like the command centers in Heroes of the Grid. Here are the 4 locations that we get. We have the Cobra Temple, the Jungle Laboratory, New York City, and Space Station Delta. So we'll move those just off to the side for the moment. I'll put them back because I think they look better than the boards necessarily. Now this is the battle board where you can be playing your cards as G.I. Joes and where you'll be playing the enemy foot soldier cards or lieutenants and boss cards. Below here we have the board for the vehicle deck, the foot soldier board, and a place to keep track of your energy. Now I'm just gonna put these back out. I like the way that they look. Actually, you know what? I think I look, just in terms of aesthetics, the blue background was better. And I'll place that out. I can't remember if we got a battle board for Heroes of the Grid. If we have, I haven't really used it. There is definitely a board that was set up for the 1 versus many mode. So next, let's take a look at the character cards. We'll take a look at the Joes first and then our villains. We'll be diving into these vehicle cards in just a moment. So here we've got Duke. Once per battle, hero of your choice may reroll any number of dice during an attack. Scarlett, counterintelligence. Once per battle, any hero may look at the top card of their deck and swap it with a card in their hand. Snake Eyes, solo operator. During each battle, add 1 die to each of your attacks until another hero plays a combat card. Pretty cool. So some of these do remind me of abilities from Heroes of the Grid. Cover Girl, tank driver. Once per battle, use a vehicle for -1 cost. We've got Stalker. Adaptive Ranger, once per battle, when any hero reveals a card with a star ability for defense, deal 1 damage to an enemy card of your choice. So there we've got the Joes. I'll put the cards back out in a moment. We're going to take a look at the vehicles. We've got a flak cannon. Use this card before a hero rolls dice for an attack to add 3 dice to it. Very cool. MMS, use this card after an enemy card is defeated by an attack. You can deal the excess damage to another card. Mobat, roll 5 dice and deal that much damage to an enemy card of your choice. The Ram, use this card after a hero plays a card to return that card into their hand instead of discarding it. The Vamp, until the end of the battle, each time a hero performs an attack, they may reroll 1 dice. And the Wolverine, use this card at the start of any hero turn to immediately defeat 1 foot soldier card. So we got some pretty cool stuff here. I'll actually put the Joes just out on top right now. So we'll take a look at their cards. We're not going to go through their stuff in detail. That would take far too long. We're already a couple minutes in. So as you can see, we've got Duke's cards. Pretty cool. Yo Joe. Let's just try to look at their signature on a real American hero. The next time any hero performs an attack during this battle, add 2 dice to that attack. Take a look at Scarlett. So ignore the guard keyword when choosing a target for this attack. Reminds me a lot of Kimberly. We got Snake Eyes here. What's his big one? I think I went past it. No, he doesn't have a huge die attack, so that'll be interesting to see how he works when we're playing with him. So Cover Girl, beautiful driving. Tank Girl, love that. Pulver. So she doesn't actually have a big die attack either. And then we've got Pulverizer with Stalker. He's got some cool stuff. He's got time to kick some butt. This card is revealed for defense. You may add it to your hand instead of discarding it. So I'll double check when we do the review about just what their big card is. She's got explosive payload, which is a special. So discard 1 vehicle from the power board. This card deals damage amount equal to the vehicle's cost. You may divide every amount any number of targets. So that is pretty cool. And I just noticed the battery's running down a little bit, so we're going to take a look at the miniatures. Then I'll pause, and we're going to come back at you and finish off with taking a look at the forces of Cobra. So here we've got the miniature for Duke. A lot more detail than Heroes of the Grid miniatures. Here we've got Cover Girl. You've got Stalker. Scarlett. She looks awesome as well. And then the famous Snake Eyes, who just looks very cool. And then we've got the G.I. Joe, your player dice with the double hits, single hits, and the missed values. All right, so while I swap this battery out, give me about 30 seconds, probably faster than that when it comes to editing. And I'll be back in a flash, and we'll take a look at the components for the enemies. Now we're going to take a look at the components for the other side of this game, the Cobra component. So here we've got the cards for Copperhead, his Lieutenant card, Dr. Mindbender. I like the art, Major Bludd. I believe some of this art has been used in the G.I. Joe deck building game. Baroness. We've got our Nemesis card, Cobra Commander. Then we've got the Crimson Guard, enemy cards, the Cobra Troopers. And then here we've got the military compound. So for the Universal Deployment, the Global Summit, the Research Lab, and the Secret Base. So I think it's fairly straightforward what those will be when you take a look at the locations. So just we got the deployment deck. You'll identify which deck is the White Cobra, and then which deck is going to have the Black and Yellow Cobra, and that'll just help you when you do the Universal Deployment. We've got the cards with the health, their abilities, and if they have any statuses like guard. And I don't want this to take forever, so we're not going to be going through everything. So here are the Crimson Guard cards. So half the heroes in this battle rounded up, discard the top card of their deck. That's pretty annoying. As you can see, we got Cobra Commander, his card. Like, fast passive. While this card is in play, increase the health value of all foot soldiers by 1. Deploy 1 Crimson Guard to this location when this card resolves. Pretty annoying. So he's got a lot of fast cards. Really trying to make sure he goes first. We got Baroness. So I missed this when I looked at the card originally. I do know how to play as the Nemesis. This is going to attach to the lead G.I. Joe. At the end of each enemy turn, if a hero has no cards in their hand, they are defeated. So, Mistress of Manipulation. Each hero draws 1 card and discards 2 cards from their hands. That's annoying. Undercover Agent. While this card is in play, the energy cost of all combat cards are increased by 1. Yuck. Major Bludd. Cobra will prevail, deal 2 damage to each hero twice, so a lot more direct damage. Doesn't seem to have too many fast or guard cards, but some can drain 3 energy. Dr. Mindbender. Deal 3 damage and drain 2 energy. 1 hero discards a card with the highest shield value and deal an amount of damage to each hero based on the shield value of that card. That's annoying. And then we've got Copperhead. Deal 5 damage to the hero with the most cards in their hand. So you're going to want to try to take him out because he's dealing a ton of damage. Some of these definitely feel a little tougher from what I remember for heroes in the base game. Now we're going to take a look at the miniatures. So we've got the Crimson Guard, Cobra Trooper. Like I said, very detailed miniatures. Renegade Games did a great job. Baroness. Not the most detailed, but compared to Heroes of the Grid, I'm really happy. Here we've got Copperhead. Major Bludd, who's got a lot of detail on him. Dr. Mindbender. And Cobra Commander. So there you have it. We've now taken a look at all the components for G.I. Joe Mission Critical. Keep it right here, as Julie and I will be coming back at you with our review. Well, I'll probably do a how to play. I haven't quite decided yet, but either there will be the how to play or the review of the game. Stay tuned. You'll have to either take a look at the timestamps or you'll be surprised in a flash. So now I'll teach you how to play G.I. Joe Mission Critical. We're going to start by taking a look at the quick start guide. Now this really is just for veterans of Heroes of the Grid. This is the one-page set of instructions that will detail the differences between the two games. Highlights really the vehicles and the new Universal Deployment System, which we'll talk about in just a moment. I will discuss the setup. However, if you want to see it in a little bit more detail, feel free to check out our review on how to play of Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid. There'll be a card popping up right in the corner. What you will be doing when you start the game is putting all of your Joes in the pit. At this point, Julie and I are in the middle of the game, the Heavy Firepower expansion. We're reviewing that. So we've got Roadblock out here and Scarlett over there who aren't being used in the game currently. So we'll be featuring those characters on this How to Play. as we're in the middle of the game, we already have some enemies that are still deployed. So we're going to be going really through our second deployment at this point. Now you can see part of the vehicle board. You can also see some of the figures that we have defeated. You may be wondering why I have this dice here. Well, the reason for that is I'm keeping track of some excess figures, and that's because there is no limit to the amount of foot soldier figures, which is another difference from Heroes of the Grid. So once you're all set up and you're ready to go, you're going to go into your deployment deck, and that is going to correspond with these different locations, such as the Research Lab, Military Base, Global Summit, and the Secret Base. Now you can place these tokens anywhere. I just kind of kept it thematic because I liked it, and you may use this idea with Heroes of the Grid as well. Now at the start of the game, one of the things that you need to do is assign a color to your 2 foot soldiers deck to use with the universal deployment deck. So I have the black and yellow for the Crimson Guard, and then my Cobra Troopers, which I'm just reaching over here and grabbing right now, will be associated with the classic Cobra white and red. So that gives you an idea as to who's going to be spawning where. Cobra Troopers are blue, and the Crimson Guard is of course red. Now on that note, I will pick up the cards that I set aside here from the deployment deck, and what I'm going to do is just flip it over and reveal what we've got. So this tells me that I have 2 of the Crimson Guard that will be deployed to the military compound, which is the Space Station Delta. Next, I reveal the card, which is 3 Crimson Guards and the Lieutenant Scrap Iron in the Secret Base. So we place the 3 guys here with Lieutenant Scrap Iron now in the Secret Base. We can now discard Scrap Iron's card. We then get 3 blue Cobra Troopers that get deployed to the Global Summit. And the importance of this is the fact that we already have some guys here. This location is now going to become panicked, meaning it cannot go over its figure limit, and no figures can be placed here until it is no longer panicked. Any excess figures are going to move 1 clockwise, meaning this Cobra Trooper now is going to come hang out with Scrap Iron at the base. So that would be our 3rd deployment. We're going to reveal our 4th, which will be 2 more of the Crimson Guard in the military installation, followed by 2 more Crimson Guard, and then we just reveal the top of the deck, which would be in the Research Lab. I'd already done a pre-test on the deployment, so if you're wondering why it looks so different. So these guys are in the laboratory. And there you have it. That is your deployment phase. Now, each character has 2 actions that are represented by these 2 actions. Action tokens. Sorry, I was just lost for words there for a second. And we'll discuss all the different things that you can do. And one thing I do want to point out as well is that the temple is panicked whenever there's a lieutenant there. The location will become panicked. However, once you defeat the lieutenant, even if you don't defeat all the foot soldiers, they essentially will run away. A lieutenant is defeated by defeating 4 of his cards. Foot soldiers are defeated when you defeat their cards individually. So we'll take a look at combat with the battle board in just a moment. I'm probably going to remove everything that's here and just place the battle board out so that it will be a lot easier. But let's see what the different actions that we can take are. Now, first and foremost, you may use this action to move. So you just flip it over and you may move to any location on the board. Now, if you do happen to move to the pit, you may power up, which will let you shuffle all of your cards into your deck. You will draw 5 new cards, as well as gain 1 energy. Not 1 from the center, you just gain 1 from the supply. If you already have an energy, you will not gain 1. Now, another option is you may do a recover action. To do a recover action, you're going to see what cards are in your discard pile, and you are able to add 3 shields of cards back into your deck. So it could be 1 card, so let's just flush them out for a roadblock. It could be always time to cook and a movable object. It could be, 3 one shield cards. It could be Fight for Freedom, Immovable Object, and Time to Cook. It's completely up to you. The advantage of powering up is you get all your cards back at once as you're doing a full reset. So those are the primary actions that you're going to be doing. The other action is starting a battle. So you would flip over your token to engage in combat with the enemy forces that are there. Now, as I said earlier, for the sake of teaching you the game, we are only going to be using Scarlett and Roadblocks deck. You've got a good idea as to what we've got going on. We're going to pretend that they are at full health. Over here on the vehicle board, as we had previously defeated Lieutenant in our gameplay, we have a token here which would let us play one vehicle for free. We'll discuss a little bit how we use it. But for right now, I'm going to clear the board and I'm going to set up the battle board because that's what we're going to be using to play the cards, play the vehicles, and it's just going to make things a little bit neater and cleaner. And that's where the nitty-gritty aspect of the game really happens. So on that note, we've got the battle board here. You'll notice you've got multiple rows. You should actually probably have more, but for most scenarios, this battle board is good enough. So we're going to move the miniatures off. We don't really need them at this point. So as you can see, they're all disappearing off camera. We're just going to leave the ones that are going to be represented in the battle. And don't forget, we got these life tokens here. That's what this 3 energy is for. If Joe is defeated, well, you can respawn them as long as there's energy there. So we will send Roadblock and Scarlett to take on our enemies. We'll place the battle board here. Well, we can't actually see all the battle boards, so you know what? Forget the idea of keeping some of the miniatures out. We're just going to replace everything besides what we really need is this board and the cards. So in this case, we'll show, I'm going to shuffle the decks. They should have already been shuffled. You should already draw your hand. Now when you start a battle, you can draw up to 5 cards. You do not have to. The amount of cards is completely optional. But for the sake of playing the game and showing you guys just some of the stuff, we'll start with a full hand of 5 cards. So we've got Roadblocks cards. And then shuffle these out. We'll draw Scarlett's cards. The rest of their decks, I do need to keep nearby for references because they will be able to draw them for defense. Now we've got different abilities here. So Scarlett's counterintelligence is once per battle, any hero may look at the top card of their deck and swap it with a card in their hand. And Roadblocks is heavy weapons once per battle. When an enemy card is defeated, you may spend 1 energy to deal any excess damage to an adjacent card. So keep those in mind. We really don't need to have those on camera, but they are fairly important. So we've got Scarlett's cards as well. Now, what do we do when we get into a fight with a lieutenant and foot soldiers? Well, we shuffle up the lieutenant's cards, and if you're fighting foot soldiers, you're going to do the exact same thing, just you're not going to have the top row of cards filled with cards played by the lieutenant. So you reveal 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you see that some cards have passive abilities, so make sure what they are. There'll be some cards that are fast that will mean that the enemies will take the first turn in battle. Now because we have 3 Crimson Guards and 1 Cobra Trooper, we're going to start with the Crimson Guard cards. You can deploy them in any order. It is completely up to you, the player. So we deploy 1, 2, so we can get fast, meaning the enemies will go first this turn. So we do the Crimson Guard, and then we'll deploy the Cobra Trooper, which is another fast card. Now one thing that you should know with regards to guard works orthogonally. So right now this card is guarding the Rattler attack as well as the armor-piercing rounds, meaning it has to be defeated first. You also have the laser-guided brilliant weapon. You have the limitless ammunition. So lots of stuff that is currently being guarded, but 2 cards that are guarded, that have guard, cannot guard each other. So no guard amongst these 3. However, this has to be defeated before this. The way this works is each card is going to resolve. You'll tilt it sideways to show that their task has now been completed. So this is where we're at. We're in battle. We are also allowed to use vehicles at any time in the battle, so just make that note to yourself. We have some pretty cool stuff that we can do, but we're going to go through this properly. So let's just go ahead and see what we get with limitless ammunition. When this card is in play, heroes cannot attack any scrap iron cards other than limitless ammunition. So this is the only card that we can attack. So that's actually not that bad. No need to stop it from going first. So we'll let that resolve. Well, we've got 2 energy that we can use in the battle. And for the sake of just showing you lots of cool stuff, we're going to imagine that each of our heroes also has 2 energy. Here are Scarlett's energy. And here's what we got with Roadblock. Now, we can do some pretty cool stuff, especially considering we've got Roadblock and the situation is tough. So we're going to want to, so I grabbed his deck. We're going to want to go ahead and start off right now with his energy cannon, which is a 5-die attack. And after you resolve this attack, if the target was defeated, you can deal excess damage from this card to an enemy card of your choice. Meaning you can target limitless ammunition and push some damage over onto armor-piercing rounds. Now we can also spend 4 on the foot soldiers. So I just grabbed 3 to trigger the flat cannon to add 3 more dice to the attack, meaning this 5-die attack now becomes an 8-die attack. So we've got 6, 7, 8. I did pick up a couple extra die packs. We'll roll the dice. And unfortunately, that really was not the best roll. So just to give you an idea as to why you want to work together, let's imagine that, for example, we had Duke in the battle. Duke has a special ability that would let a character re-roll, and that's what I'll do. We'll imagine that it wasn't just Scarlett and Roadblock. We're not really playing his cards, but he probably would have joined us. You're not typically going to take on a lieutenant and 4 foot soldiers with just 2 heroes. So you get a chance to re-roll, and that's way more like it. So you get the damage. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, 8 damage. So using your big attack, thanks to Duke helping us out with a reroll, you would then defeat this card. We defeat armor-piercing rounds, which prevents us from half the heroes in this battle having to discard the top card of their deck, and then deal 2 damage to those heroes. So we can push that right over to that. This card's already resolved, meaning when this card goes ahead and tries to resolve, we're good to go. This card now costs us 3 energy, and spending all of that energy and resources, including the flat cannon, which is now discarded, I'm just putting it off to the side to remind myself that I need to put it back for later. We're now going on to this card, but you'll notice that we actually have gained back some time in battle because of the fact that we were able to defeat the card. And you'll notice that guard really prevents targeting. The fact that we dealt excess damage, we're able to just push it over to this card. So let's see what else we can do. But that costs us 3 energy, so things are going to get a lot trickier from this point. Now once the card is played, it goes in the player's discard pile. Well, we need to do 5 damage, and I don't have too many great things left. Scarlett can ignore guard, but she doesn't really need to, but she's got a 3 energy, 6-die attack, which isn't best. She's got the skilled sniper. So we've got a lot of tricky things we got to do, but you know what? We're going to try to go big again, even if we don't have any rerolls, because we don't have a choice. We actually, you know what? No, let's not do that. We're going to play Roadblocks. Sorry, I'm going to put this back with Scarlett's card. We're going to try to take out Limitless Ammunition with Fight for Freedom. So that is a 2-die card. Let's see what we get here. So we're able to deal 2 damage to it. Now we can spend one of the 2 communal energy that we get each battle for another character to play a 0-cost card. So sorry, too many cards out here. So this now means that we will use Scarlett's All Business. So any army look at the top card of their deck and swap it. Hopefully we get a nice 2 damage. So we do get 2 damage, meaning we've taken out Limitless Ammunition. However, we do have the laser-guided brilliant weapon that's going to go off, One hero reveals the top card of their deck. If it has a shield value of 2, it is discarded. Otherwise, that card is discarded and this ability is resolved again. Well, this is annoying. This is how you'd also check for damage. So take a look at Roadblock's deck. We'll reveal the card. It's 2 shields, which can block up to 2 damage, meaning we're not going to resolve this effect again. But this card then gets discarded. So for example, if the Raptor attack had triggered, it would let us make us discard an energy, discard a card from here. This one would deal 2 damage. Now what you do is you'd have to reveal cards from your deck. And you'd just be like, so if you get 2 shields, you block 2 damage, it gets discarded. If you're lucky enough to pull a 3 shield card, it would go to the bottom of your deck. So 3 shields blocks, 2 goes to the bottom of your deck. You do have some cards that may let you actually increase your defense. So now we're moving on. This card, so we played the card, we took that one out. This card resolved afterwards. Yeah, we've actually only played 2 cards. 3 cards are resolved. So now we're actually ahead of this fight, so we can start trying to take that out. But these are going to start resolving afterwards. So this is part of the strategy of the game. Are you going to be taking out the foot soldiers down here? Or do you want to take out the lieutenant? You really want to try to get rid of the lieutenant. We are a little bit worse for wear now because of some of the cards we have. We've got less energy. We also may want to think strategically and potentially look at playing cards like maneuvers, because maneuvers can go a long way. We don't have anything great currently with Roadblock. However, Scarlett has a pretty solid maneuver. Now, if she'd actually been playing her stuff, this is great because this one would let you gain an energy and choose 2 cards from your discard pile and return them to the top of your deck. So it's a great way to get cards and gain some energy, especially when you've got a card that's going to resolve and not have any negative effect. But at this point, we haven't really done anything. We do have a 3-die attack, the Skilled Sniper, so that's what I would play, spending 1 energy. And definitely going to ignore the Raptor attack, focus on trying to take out the big bad. So we deal 3 damage, add 2 to it, the Raptor attack goes, the Vamp gets discarded, and we lose our last energy. So maybe that wasn't the best thing to do because we can now only play 0-cost cards. And look at what we got. Don't have too many great 0-cost cards with either of the characters currently. So we're going to have to try to figure this out. But remember, Scarlett has played a couple cards, so you can put the 0-cost card and the Skilled Sniper back in her deck, which is why you'd play Taekwondo Mastery. Unfortunately, though, if I play it now, it's going to drain 2 energy, which is absolutely what we don't want it to do. So let's look at Roadblock instead. He's got Suppressive Fire. He has a chance to maybe take these guys out. It'll reduce damage by 1. So why not? Let's go ahead and play Suppressive Fire. We can try to take out one of the foot soldiers. This one's guarded, unfortunately. I think, you know what? We're just going to go ahead and try to take out the laser guided one. You can correct me if I was wrong. I thought I actually got 3 hits with Scarlett. So this goes. We deal 2 damage. So that's when we reveal the top card of their deck. So Scarlett's top card. It's 2 damage, but Suppressive Fire, let's reduce it by 1, meaning this will go to the bottom. Now what this does, deal 3 damage and skip the next hero turn in battle. So that can be fun. And then while this is active, while this is in play, increase the health value of each adjacent card. So unfortunately, we don't have any really great things that we can do besides look for another 0-cost card attack, or we're only going to end up with 1 single chance to make this work. But luckily we did have 2 Suppressive Fires. I'm going to go ahead, and we got 0. So that was just no good, actually, and terrible roll because this goes, skips the next turn in battle. This will then resolve, and so we're now on the final turn, and I think when I'm looking at everything, we are actually out of energy, And we don't have too much else that we can do. So no, at this point, we really aren't in a good space. So because of what came out, we've got the maneuver, Yo Joe. So the smart thing to have done, instead of playing suppressive fire, if you really want to win the game, so let's say instead of playing suppressive fire, you play the Taekwondo Mastery, gain an energy. These things are going to go. You can put the cards back into your deck, and the same thing, you play Yo Joe, which just will deal 1 damage based on the energy you spend, defeating this card. So at least you take out the lieutenant, and you're good to go. Now, we did have the Mobat there. So one of the things we could have done as well, since we're completely out of cards, is spend this token, trigger the Mobat, which is roll 5 dice and deal damage to an enemy card of your choice. So that would have let us just completely go ahead and take out one of these cards or even one of these other ones that we're getting in our way later on. But there you have it. You've really seen the overview of how you play the game. Just don't forget that you will lose the game if all locations are panicked. You will lose the game if you run out of life. And if you happen to be playing with the 6-player variant, you have no life. That is the advantage of playing with 6 players. But if your deck ever runs out, you will lose the game. Those are the rules for 6 players that I found in Heroes of the Grid that Julie and I play with all the time. We did not find them in the Mission Critical rulebook, but they should be there. I'm surprised they weren't in the Heavy Firepower expansion. So we've taught you how to play G.I Joe Mission Critical. Now keep it right here. We're going to be coming back at you with a review of the game. So Julie, what did you think of G.I Joe Mission Critical?
Okay, where to start? The girls are cooler than the guys?
Well, I don't know. Snake Eyes is cool. Scarlett's not that cool. CoverGirl's cool. I would say this when it comes to all the characters, they are definitely not created equal.
That's for sure.
Just to let you know, we did play with the 6-player variant rules from Heroes of the Grid. That's the way we play the game. We're also going to be covering the Heavy Firepower expansion, so the more players we get to play, the faster we get to our reviews. Now, who was your favorite character so far in this game?
CoverGirl, for sure. I enjoyed Snake Eyes. And, Roadblock and Duke are pretty cool, too. Stalker was good. He's defensive. But, yeah, definitely CoverGirl feels like she's the biggest badass.
Yeah, and the reason for that is the way she interacts with the vehicles. Now, in G.I. Joe Mission Critical, you do replace the Zord board with the vehicle board, and you'll be playing different vehicles that will get discarded, and her abilities that let you cycle through the vehicles that are on the board, which are very clutch, especially if you have the vehicle promo pack. The fact that she can deal damage based on the vehicles that are there. She's just a very strong character overall. My favorite right now is Snake Eyes because he is just a one-man wrecking machine. And if you have played Heroes of the Grid, you can definitely see the DNA of some of the characters in terms of some of the design. Snake Eyes feels like an improved Green Ranger. So if you played Heroes of the Grid, just take that into account. You'll see where I'm coming from. And Duke feels very much like Jason the Red Ranger with the ability to reroll dice and still hit fairly hard.
Yeah, and I think we'll get to a comparison between those two games in a minute. I'm not a huge fan, or I'm not all that knowledgeable on the IP, but this does feel fairly thematic. I'm not sure how I felt about the vehicles, though. I mean, you pay for them, but you get to use them only once. So I don't know. I think we got the hang of it a little bit more towards the end. I think we were kind of afraid to use them at first, the first couple times we played them, because of their cost. But I don't know. I think I like the Zords better.
I'm going to agree with you. I prefer the Zords to the vehicles. Now, when it comes to being thematic, you are absolutely right, because different episodes of G.I. Joe in the comics, they're always using different vehicles, different equipment. Now, some of it will be specialized, so the fact that you're cycling through works incredibly well with the theme. Some characters did, however, though, have their signature vehicle, and it was a lot more fun, I found, to have a Zord that I could rely on that would just reset, because some of those abilities are great, and you want to use that same ability. Now, it does add a level of tension to the game, because if you get rid of a good vehicle during a lieutenant fight, the chances of you having it to fight the boss, Cobra Commander, are far less.
Agreed. I mean, I don't really have much more to say. The lieutenants kind of felt easy compared to the I don't know, the intermediate bosses, however you want to call them.
Yeah, the lieutenants, I think they're solid, though. We got fairly lucky, especially fighting Baroness, who's got the ability to just knock out characters, defeat them when they have 0 cards in their hand, which is a big thing, especially if we're playing with 6 characters. You know from those 6-player variant rules that you do not have any energy in the pit or the command center, so when a character gets knocked out, you're down for the count. That being said, I got some great rolls with Snake Eyes. Roadblock was there from the Heavy Firepower expansion and Duke, so we were able to kind of chain across some damage, and we put her out of her misery, well, out of our misery rather quickly. And I think that's one of the things that we found with this game is that you can find some cool combos, but when it comes to just the characters in the core box, which don't include Roadblock, it can be fairly challenging. And playing this core box reminded me a lot of playing the Shattered Grid expansion for Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, where you've got some cool Rangers that do lots of cool stuff, but the synergies between the full team don't quite come together, and these characters feel that they're designed to fit with any other G.I. Joe, which is pretty cool, but that means you don't really have the awesome combos that we've seen in Heroes of the Grid, where the MMPR team works really well together, the Time Force Rangers were fun, and God, I know Julie loves the Zeo Rangers because she loved just smashing down bosses with...
Trini?
Well, no, that was the MMPR Rangers. He was doing that as well, but I think it was Rocky with his axes that hit everything, even though they have corrected that in the errata. It was fun while it lasted.
There you go. It was fun while it lasted. I don't really have much more to add, except for the fact that one of the first comments I had when we sat at the table is, oh boy, this is a table hog.
Because of the battle board, which we have for Heroes of the Grid, but we just don't use it because it didn't come with the base game.
Yeah, it takes up a lot of space, especially when you're playing with this many players. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have much more to add. It's very similar to the Power Rangers game that we played. So that's it. And if you notice, Jason got me the colored dice, so the stuff that comes with the game, the green dice, right?
Yes.
You decided to get the red, white, and blue to make me happy.
Always got to get her the colored dice. And Julie's right. This game plays a lot like Heroes of the Grid. I mean, it is the same system. Now, these characters were designed by T.C. Petty III instead of Jonathan Ying, and it feels like he's going with a little bit different design philosophy. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do feel, though, that when it comes in terms of the content that you're getting in the core box versus what we have in the core box of Heroes of the Grid, it might feel a little lacking in that respect because you don't have that team that's just meshing together. But I think you're going to have a lot more fun mixing and matching the G.I. Joes in the long term. All the characters felt incredibly thematic. I do really like the new universal deployment system, which uses tokens to randomize what the locations on the board are going to be. And you also have just generic symbols that you'll assign to the foot soldier cards, generic colors for when that they're coming out of the deck. And that, I think, is definitely a straight up improvement over Heroes of the Grid. What I do like is how we've seen an iteration on this Guardian system. And I really like the fact that you can, mix this with Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid to get some epic comic book style battles. And the components feel good. Like, the tokens and cardboard stuff actually feel superior to what we had in the original run of Heroes of the Grid. The cards have been sleeved, but they felt really good as well. And the miniatures have more detail. So there's been a lot of steps forward, I think. But in terms of the fun of the experience, I think if you are a G.I. Joe fan, this is the one you're going to want to get. If Joe's are your thing, don't get Heroes of the Grid. If you're a fan of both IPs and you can only afford to get one right now, I would say I'd pick Heroes of the Grid over this. I think this one will get better over time, and all the key mechanics are there for a G.I. Joe game. But I think the thing that's kind of bringing it down at least a little bit in my eyes is when I look at the other G.I. Joe games that Renegade has put out. We've not played the RPG yet, but when it comes to the deck builder, I think the deck builder actually felt even more thematic and is probably our favorite deck builder out of all the ones that Renegade's been putting out. And we love Heroes of the Grid, especially me, and Power Rangers is probably our least favorite. So it's just an interesting contrast. I think the Guardian system works better right now for Heroes of the Grid, but it fits well enough with G.I. Joe. Well, as the deck builder, I think the way that was designed is just the best of the bunch.
Do you have anything more you want to add before your rating?
No, I think we've talked enough about the game, and it's time to give our rating of it. I'm really curious what Julie's going to give it.
Well, how about you go first then?
So I'm going to give this a 7. When I was first playing the game, it actually was looking like it might have gone a little lower. But after getting a chance to play as Snake Eyes and CoverGirl, really seeing just how the G.I. Joes work together, I did have some fun playing with Roadblock. But like I said, he's not in this box, so I want to take him out of it when I'm evaluating just the core box with the content. So my first experience was just with Stalker and Duke, which was fun, but not the best. And I got the full round out experience, and I see that we've got a solid base, but the game definitely needs some more expansions, hopefully soon, to really flesh it out and bring it up to its full potential. And that's going to be a detractor for some people because a lot of people don't like expanding their game, and I feel like this is a game that you're going to get the best out of it by expanding it, because I feel like it could get pretty old, especially if you end up playing this with 5 players and you get a character you don't really like.
So kind of the opposite is true for me, for similar reasons. Because I started with, CoverGirl and Snake Eyes, I was thinking this was a 7, and now that I've played the other characters, this fell to a 6.5 for me. For basically the same reasons, though, expansion or not doesn't really have much of an impact on me. Jason just, comes home with content or it arrives at the front door. So, that I can't really comment on. But, as Jason said, I think and we talked about before we were on camera, I really think I do enjoy the Power Rangers one a little bit more, and it really has nothing to do with IPs because neither IP really speaks to me. So
it's just the way the teams work together. I like playing as a team, and I don't think we have a great G.I. Joe team yet. Now, we're going to be reviewing the Heavy Firepower expansion, so maybe Bomb Strike and Gung Ho, mixing with some of these characters, will make us change our mind. Who knows? We'll talk about it when we get to that review if our esteem of the core box goes up. Now, both are out at the same time, so my recommendation is pick them both up. You're going to get the better experience, and you can play the game in 6 players. Oh, one of the things that I do not like, and maybe I just missed in the rulebook, the 6-player rules do not seem to be in the rulebook, but as you can see in front of us, we have the action tokens to play with up to 6 players. So clearly it is designed for that. I thought they may be in the Heavy Firepower expansion, but they're missing. If you need them, take a look at the Heroes of the Grid rulebook. They are there. They are identical.
So on that note, it's time to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to be notified when we have new content for you.
And take a look down below in the video description. You can find links to all our social media feeds, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you'd like to see some pictures of Julie and I playing G.I. Joe Mission Critical, there are plenty on those feeds. Also down there's a link to multizone.ca, a great Canadian game store. Click the link, you'll get 10% off your next purchase, and it's a great way to support the channel, as a portion of that purchase will be returned to us. So if you're looking for G.I. Joe Mission Critical, Power Rangers, Heroes of the Grid, anything by Renegade Games, the deck building games, make sure you check it out and get that discount because, it's Christmas time and making your dollar go further is always a good thing. And on that note, we're going to have links popping up in front of us to some of our previously released videos. So he's almost jumping the gun there. In front of me will be our most recent release, and in front of Julie, I think we need to take you back to our review and how to play of Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, since the games are so intimately tied together. And now we are going to
grab our drink,
grab our fellow Joe,
or Jane.
Jane works too. I'm going to remind you to keep playing games.